I destroyed my entire career with one email. Not a scandal, not embezzlement, not sleeping with someone's spouse. Just 347 words typed at 11:37 in the evening on a Tuesday night after 2 glasses of wine and 6 months of accumulated rage. 347 words about our CEO that I meant to send to my work friend Marcus. Except I didn't send it to Marcus. I sent it to everyone. All 3,216 employees at Tech Vista Solutions, including the CEO himself. I watched the little swoosh sound happen, watched the email disappear from my draft folder, and for exactly 4 seconds I felt good, triumphant even, like I'd finally said what needed to be said. Then I looked at the recipient field. Company-wide distribution list. Not Marcus Chen. My entire stomach dropped into my feet. This was it. This was how I ended my career. Not with a bang, not with glory, but with a wine-fueled rant sent to literally everyone who could fire me. Let me back up. Let me tell you how I got here. Because nobody just wakes up one day and decides to professionally immolate themselves. It's a process. My name is Lydia Grant. I'm 29 years old. I live in Seattle in a tiny apartment in Capitol Hill with my roommate Joss, who is way too patient with me. I'm a graphic designer. Was a graphic designer. Well, I still am technically, but the story gets complicated. 18 months ago, I was freelancing. Making decent money, but not great money. The kind of money where you're constantly doing mental math about whether you can afford both groceries and electricity this month. My roommate Joss kept giving me these concerned looks every time the bills arrived. Not judgmental, just worried. The kind of looks that make you realize you need to do something different. So, I applied to Tech Vista Solutions. They're a tech startup in downtown Seattle. Well, not really a startup anymore. They have like 3,000 employees. But they still call themselves a startup because it sounds cooler than saying you're a mid-sized company with venture capital funding. The job was for a marketing coordinator position. Basically, making graphics, designing campaigns, doing all the creative work that makes tech companies look like they have personality. I was good at it. Really good. I'd been designing for 6 years at that point, and I knew my stuff. The interview went well. They offered me the job. $58,000 a year. Health insurance. Dental. An actual retirement plan. Things that seem basic but feel like luxury when you've been freelancing and buying insurance through the marketplace and praying you don't get sick. I said yes immediately. My first day at Tech Vista was a Tuesday in March. Spring in Seattle, which means it was raining. It's always raining. They gave me a desk on the 4th floor near the window. I could see the Space Needle from my chair if I leaned back far enough. I had a brand new computer, a ergonomic chair, and a little plant that Joss gave me as a good luck gift. The office was exactly what you'd expect from a Seattle tech company. Open floor plan. Standing desks everywhere. A kitchen stocked with kombucha, cold brew, coffee, and snacks that are allegedly healthy but mostly just expensive. Lots of exposed brick and industrial lighting. A ping-pong table that nobody ever used. Signs everywhere about innovation and disruption and changing the world. Our CEO, Richard Hartley, loved to talk about company culture. He sent these weekly emails about transparency and authenticity, and how Tech Vista was different from other companies. How we were a family. How everyone's voice mattered. How we valued honesty and integrity above all else. Spoiler alert, he was full of it. But I didn't know that yet. For the first few months, I actually believed it. I thought I'd found a good place. A place where I could do creative work, get paid reliably, and maybe even advance my career. I made friends pretty quickly. There was Marcus, another designer, who sat 3 desks away from me. He was 31 funny good at his job, and even better at navigating office politics. He knew when to speak up and when to stay quiet. He knew whose jokes to laugh at, and whose emails to respond to immediately. Skills I've never had. There was Maya Chen, who ran the entire design department. She'd been at Tech Vista for 5 years. She was 42, brilliant, and the kind of person who made you want to do better work just to impress her. She barely noticed me at first. I was just another junior designer. But eventually, after I turned in a few campaigns that actually performed well, she started giving me more interesting projects. And there was Joss at home who listened to me talk about work every night over whatever cheap dinner we scraped together. Pasta, mostly. Lots of pasta. She worked as a barista at a coffee shop in Fremont, and she was saving up to go back to school for social work. We'd known each other since college. She was the steady one. The responsible one. The one who remembered to pay bills on time and buy toilet paper before we ran out. For the first year, work was fine. Not perfect, but fine. I did my job. I designed campaigns for product launches, social media graphics, email templates, presentation decks. Some of it was interesting. Most of it was routine. But I was learning the corporate world, learning how things worked at a bigger company, and I was noticing things, little things at first, like how the same 3 people always got the best projects. How those 3 people all happened to play golf with Richard. How they all stayed late, not because they had work, but because Richard was still there and FaceTime mattered more than actual productivity. I noticed how Maya, who'd built the design department from nothing, kept getting passed over for promotions. How Richard would compliment her work in meetings, but never actually give her more authority or money or recognition. I noticed how Brad, this guy who'd been hired 6 months after me, somehow got put on every high-visibility project despite being mediocre at best. He was 26, fresh out of business school, and confidently incompetent in that way that only privileged dudes can pull off. But the moment that broke me, the moment that led to the email, happened 3 weeks ago. It was the quarterly all-hands meeting. These huge company-wide things, where everyone crammed into the biggest conference space we had, or joined via video if they worked remotely. Richard always ran them. He'd stand at the front with his little headset microphone looking like a tech conference keynote speaker and talk about company metrics and quarterly goals and vision. This particular meeting, he announced promotions. 3 people were being promoted to senior positions. First was Jennifer, who worked in sales and spent more time at happy hours with Richard than actually selling anything. Second was Tom from engineering, who was competent but not exceptional. And third was Brad. Brad, 26-year-old Brad, who'd been at the company for less than a year. Brad, who regularly asked me questions about basic design concepts. Brad, who took credit for other people's work. Brad was being promoted to senior marketing strategist. I sat there in my chair, in the middle of rows of folding chairs, and felt something crack inside me. Not dramatically. Not obviously. Just a quiet little break. Because 3 months earlier, I'd pitched a campaign concept for our biggest product launch of the year. A whole integrated thing with social media, email, landing pages, and video content. I'd worked on it for weeks. I'd presented it to the marketing team, including Brad. 2 weeks later, in a meeting with Richard and the executive team, Brad presented my concept. Word for word, my designs, my strategy, my ideas. He presented them as his own. And I sat there, invited to the meeting to provide design, support, and listen to him take credit for everything I'd done. I spoke up. Politely, professionally. I mentioned that I'd developed that concept, that Brad and I had worked on it together. Richard looked at me, smiled, and said something like, "That's great, Lydia. Collaboration is what makes us strong." Then he turned back to Brad and kept talking about how innovative the concept was. And now Brad was getting promoted. Maya Chen, who'd been there for 5 years and basically ran the department, got nothing. I got nothing. But Brad got promoted because he knew how to play the game, how to take credit, how to be in the right place at the right time, saying the right things to the right people. After the meeting, I walked back to my desk in a fog. Marcus came by. He looked frustrated too. "That Brad thing is ridiculous," he muttered quietly so only I could hear. "It's fine," I said automatically. "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. I went home that night. Joss took one look at my face and poured me a glass of wine without asking. "That bad?" she asked. I told her everything. The promotion. Brad. The credit stealing. The fact that I'd been working my tail off for 18 months and had nothing to show for it except a desk near a window and a slowly growing sense that I'd made a terrible mistake taking this job. Joss listened. She was good at that. Then she said, "You know what you need to do." "Quit," I asked. "Find a new job," she corrected. "Then quit. Don't leave without a plan." She was right. She was always right. But I was tired. Tired of updating my portfolio, tired of applying to jobs, tired of starting over. I'd already started over once when I went from freelancing to corporate. The thought of doing it again made me want to crawl into bed and not come out. Instead, I poured a second glass of wine. Then I opened my laptop. And I started writing. Not a job application. Not a resignation letter. Just a vent. The kind of vent you send to a trusted friend when you need to get the poison out of your system before it eats you alive from the inside. I wrote about Richard. About his fake authenticity, his obvious favoritism, his complete disconnect between what he said the company valued and what he actually rewarded. I wrote about Brad and the promotion and the credit stealing. I wrote about Maya and how she deserved better. I wrote about how TechVista's entire culture was a performance, a carefully crafted image that had nothing to do with reality. 347 words. Single-spaced. No paragraphs. Just pure unfiltered rage typed into an email draft. When I finished, I felt better. Lighter. Like I'd lanced a wound and let the infection drain out. I addressed it to Marcus. He'd get it. He'd laugh. He'd probably send back some dark joke, and we'd both feel a little less alone in our frustration. I hit send. Swoosh. Gone. And then I looked at the recipient field. Company-wide at techvista.com. Not Marcus Chen at techvista.com. Company-wide, the distribution list that went to every single employee, every manager, every executive, every intern, every person who worked at TechVista Solutions in any capacity, including Richard Hartley. The wine glass I was holding nearly slipped from my hand. No. No, 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 no. I clicked on my sent folder. There it was. Sent at 11:37 in the evening. To company-wide at techvista.com. My brain started doing that thing where time slows down and speeds up simultaneously. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. My hands started shaking. I immediately tried to recall the message. Some email systems let you do that if people haven't opened it yet. I clicked the recall button. Unable to recall message. Recipients have already received this email. Of course they had. Because apparently 3,000 people check their work email at 11:37 on a Tuesday night. I sat there on my couch laptop, open wine glass in hand, and felt my entire life collapse in real time. This was it. This was how I ended my career. Not with a bang, not with glory, not with some principled stand for justice, but with a wine-fueled mistake, a single moment of not paying attention, one click in the wrong place. I called Marcus. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. Of course it did. Normal people are asleep at 11:45 on a Tuesday night. I texted him instead. Marcus, I need you to call me. Emergency. Then I just sat there, staring at my laptop screen. At the sent email that had just destroyed everything, Joss came out of her room. She'd been asleep. She took one look at my face and knew something catastrophic had happened. What did you do? She asked quietly, I told her. Watched her expression shift from confusion to understanding, to something like horror mixed with sympathy. Maybe nobody will see it, she offered weakly. Maybe people don't check email at night. We both knew that was wishful thinking. I refreshed my inbox. Nothing yet. No responses. No angry emails from Richard. No messages from HR. Maybe, just maybe, I had until morning. Maybe I could figure something out before anyone actually read it. I didn't sleep. Not really. I dozed on and off on the couch laptop open beside me, checking my email every 15 minutes. Nothing. Just silence. The terrible kind of silence that feels like the air before a storm. At 6:15 in the morning, my phone started buzzing. Text from Marcus. Lydia. What did you do? Then another text. From a designer I barely knew. Holy bleep, did you really send that to everyone? Then another. And another. And another. My email inbox started filling up. Some from people I'd never spoken to. Some laughing. Some concerned. Some saying finally someone said it. Some asking if I was okay. Some asking if I'd been hacked. But nothing from management. Nothing from HR. Nothing from Richard. That was somehow worse than anger. The silence from the people who actually mattered meant they were planning, strategizing, deciding what to do with me. I made coffee. Spilled it all over the counter because my hands were shaking too badly. Joss came out already dressed for her shift at the coffee shop. and found me standing in the kitchen surrounded by paper towels and spilled coffee and existential dread. She hugged me. Didn't say anything. Just hugged me. Then she left for work, squeezing my shoulder on the way out. I sat on the couch, checked my phone. More texts. More emails. The whole company was talking about it. I'd become the story. The cautionary tale. The person who lost control and nuked their career in real time. At 7:15, Marcus called. "Are you okay?" he asked immediately. "No," I said honestly. "What happened?" I told him. The wine. The venting. The wrong recipient. The whole pathetic story. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Lydia, half the company is talking about it. The other half is scared to talk about it." "Am I fired?" I asked. My voice sounded small. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "HR wants to see you at 9, he said finally. "Richard wants to see you at 9:30. So yes, I'm fired." "Probably," he admitted. And somehow that honesty helped more than any false comfort would have. I thanked him. Hung up. Stared at the wall. I had 90 minutes until my 9 o'clock meeting with HR. 90 minutes left of having a job. 90 minutes before I became officially unemployed, publicly humiliated, and professionally destroyed. I should have called in sick, should have just not shown up. But that felt cowardly. Like admitting I knew I'd done something unforgivable. And despite everything, despite the wine and the mistake in the public spectacle, I wasn't sure I wanted to apologize. Because here's the thing. The email was unprofessional. The sending it to everyone was a mistake. But the content was true. Every word of it. And maybe, just maybe, someone needed to say it. Even if that someone was me. Even if it cost me everything. I showered. Got dressed. Put on my most professional outfit, like armor. Black pants. White blouse. Blazer. The kind of clothes that say I'm taking this seriously even though everything was already over. Joss texted me. "You got this. Whatever happens, you got this." I didn't have it. But I appreciated the lie. I took the bus to work like always. The number 10 right down Pine Street to downtown. 45 minutes of watching Seattle wake up around me gray and drizzly, like always, while I mentally composed resignation speeches and apologies and explanations that all sounded hollow. I arrived at the office at 8:45, 15 minutes early for my 9 o'clock execution. The office was already buzzing when I walked in. I could feel it the second I stepped off the elevator on the 4th floor. That particular energy that happens when something dramatic has occurred and everyone knows about it. People looked at me. Some tried to hide smiles. Others looked away quickly like I was contagious. A few brave souls nodded at me with what looked like respect. Or maybe pity. Hard to tell the difference. I walked toward my desk. I didn't make it there. Marcus intercepted me halfway across the floor. He grabbed my arm and steered me toward a small conference room, the kind with glass walls that don't actually provide privacy but create the illusion of it. He closed the door. Looked at me seriously. "HR wants to see you at 9, he said. "Richard wants to see you at 9:30. He paused. "There's going to be a company-wide meeting at 3 this afternoon." My stomach dropped even further, which I didn't think was physically possible. "About me?" I asked. He nodded. "Richard's going to address what happened. Make it a teachable moment." Of course he was. Because that's what people like Richard do. They take other people's failures and turn them into opportunities to look magnanimous and wise. "Marcus," I said quietly. "That email. I meant to send it to you." "I know," he said. "And for what it's worth, you weren't wrong about him. That was the nicest thing anyone had said to me in 18 months at Tech Vista." "But I'm still fired," I said. He didn't deny it. Just looked at me with sympathy and said, "Fight for yourself in there." "Okay, don't just roll over." I nodded. Didn't trust my voice to say anything else. At 9 o'clock exactly, I walked into the HR office on the 3rd floor. Janice from HR was waiting for me. She was 50-something, professional kind, but firm. The type of person who genuinely cares about employees but also knows her job is to protect the company, not the people in it. She gestured for me to sit. "Saturday, Lydia," she began carefully, "I need you to walk me through what happened last night." I told her the truth, the whole truth, the quarterly meeting, Brad's promotion, my frustration, the wine, the email meant for Marcus, the wrong recipient, the terrible moment of realization. I didn't make excuses, I didn't minimize it. I just explained. She took notes, nodded occasionally. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. "You're not the first person to feel this way about Richard's leadership." I looked up surprised. She continued, carefully choosing her words. "But you are the first person to say it to everyone." "I didn't mean to, I know," she interrupted gently. "But intent doesn't change impact." 3,000 people received that email, Lydia. Including clients who are on certain distribution lists. Including our board members. Including investors. My face must have gone white because she added quickly, "Not all of them. But some." Oh God. It was worse than I thought. "Richard wants you terminated immediately," she said. "Direct, no sugarcoating. He believes what you wrote constitutes insubordination and creates a hostile work environment." The irony of Richard Hartley, king of actual hostile work environments, accusing me of creating one was almost funny. Almost. "There's going to be a company-wide meeting at 3, Janice continued. "Richard wants to address the situation publicly." "Let me guess," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "He's going to be understanding and compassionate while making an example of me." Janice's expression flickered. Just for a second. Like she wanted to agree, but couldn't. "I can't comment on that," she said diplomatically. "What I can tell you is that your employment status will be decided by end of day. I'd recommend preparing for that possibility." Translation: start packing your desk. "Can I resign instead of being fired?" I asked. "At least that would look better on future applications." "That's an option we can discuss," Janice said carefully. "But Richard has already made his preference clear." Of course he had. Because resigning would let me leave with some dignity. Being fired would be the lesson. The cautionary tale. The example for everyone else about what happens when you step out of line. I left the HR office feeling numb. Walked back to my floor. People watched me, trying not to be obvious about it. I sat down at my desk and stared at my computer screen without really seeing it. Work felt absurd. What was I supposed to do? Design graphics for campaigns I'd never see launched? But I opened my laptop anyway because I didn't know what else to do. People kept walking past. Some gave me sympathetic looks. Some avoided eye contact. Brad walked by with this little smirk on his face. Like he'd won. Like my failure justified his promotion somehow. I wanted to throw something at him. Instead, I just stared at my screen and tried to breathe. At 10:45, something unexpected happened. Maya Chen appeared at my desk. We'd barely spoken before. Just professional exchanges. Comments on projects. Quick questions about deadlines. She was senior leadership. I was junior nobody. We existed in different orbits. She pulled out Marcus's empty chair and sat down. Didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me with this expression I couldn't read. Then, quietly, she said, "I read your email." I braced myself. For criticism, for disappointment, for the "I expected better from you" speech. Instead, she said every word. I waited. "You wrote what a lot of us have been thinking for a long time," Maya continued, her voice low enough that nobody else could hear. "And I want you to know that it matters. That someone finally said it out loud. Even if you didn't mean to." Then she stood up and walked away before I could respond. I sat there stunned. That was the moment something shifted in me. Not acceptance exactly, but clarity. I'd made a mistake. A huge, unprofessional, career-ending mistake. But I'd also told the truth. An ugly, uncomfortable truth that people had been dancing around for years. And maybe, just maybe, that mattered. At noon, Marcus brought me lunch from the taco truck outside. I couldn't eat it, but I appreciated the gesture. "How you holding up?" he asked. "I'm getting fired at 3, I said. In front of everyone. He winced. "Yeah, I heard." We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said, "For what it's worth, you're not the villain here. Even if Richard tries to make you look like one." I wanted to believe him. But it was hard to feel like anything other than the person who'd spectacularly self-destructed in the most public way possible. The afternoon crawled by. Every minute felt like an hour. The 3 o'clock meeting loomed like a countdown. Like waiting for an execution. At 2 o'clock, I started packing my desk. Not officially, just quietly putting my personal items into my bag. The photo of me and Joss at Cary Park. The plant that was barely alive. My good coffee mug with a design that made me laugh. My laptop charger. The little things that make a workspace yours. Marcus noticed, but didn't say anything. Just gave me this look that was part sympathy, part respect. At 2:15, my email pinged. New message. From Sarah Kim. Sarah was the new PR director. She'd joined Tech Vista like 4 months ago. I'd seen her in meetings, heard her speak a few times, but never actually talked to her directly. She was 40, polished, intimidatingly competent. The kind of person who always seemed 3 steps ahead of everyone else. The subject line, "See me, now." Conference room C. My heart started racing. This couldn't be good. Was I in more trouble? Was there something else I didn't know about? More people who'd received the email? More consequences I hadn't considered? But I was already fired. What else could they do to me? I walked to conference room C. It was on the 5th floor, one of the bigger ones. Glass walls, whiteboard, long table. Usually used for client meetings. I opened the door. Sarah Kim was there. So was Maya Chen. So were 4 other people I recognized but didn't really know well. A senior designer named Tony. A project manager named Rachel. Someone from engineering whose name I thought was David. And another designer, Amy. They all looked at me as I walked in. "Sit down," Lydia Sarah said. Her voice was firm but not unkind. I Saturday confused. Nervous. Wondering what this was. "We don't have much time," Sarah continued, getting straight to the point. "So, I'll be direct. Your email was unprofessional. But it wasn't wrong." She slid a folder across the table toward me. I didn't open it. Just stared at it. For the past 6 months, Sarah said, I've been documenting concerns about Richard's leadership. Favoritism. Credit theft. Hostile work environment complaints that were filed, and then mysteriously disappeared. Promotion decisions that didn't align with performance metrics. I was building a case to present to the board. I looked up at her, not understanding. "You just accelerated my timeline," she said simply. Maya spoke up from across the table. "That campaign that got Brad promoted? That was your concept, Lydia. I have the original files. Time-stamped. With your name on every single document." Tony added, "The promotion list Richard announced at the quarterly meeting, 3 of us were supposed to be on it. Richard changed it last minute without board approval. We have the original list. We have emails." My head was spinning. I didn't understand what was happening. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Sarah leaned forward. "Because at 3 o'clock, Richard is going to try to turn you into a cautionary tale. A lesson about insubordination and professionalism and respecting leadership. He's going to make an example of you to keep everyone else in line." I nodded. I already knew that. "But what if we flipped the script?" Sarah continued. "What if you weren't the villain? What if you were the person who finally said what needed to be said?" I stared at her. "I don't understand." "The board meeting is tomorrow morning," Sarah explained. "I was going to wait. Present my case privately. Let them handle it behind closed doors. But Richard made your email public. He wants to handle this publicly. So maybe we handle our response publicly too." "You want me to defend myself at the meeting? I want you to tell the truth," Sarah said. "Not just about the email, about everything. About Brad taking credit for your work. About the promotion decisions. About the culture Richard has created." "But I'm getting fired anyway," I said. "What difference does it make?" Maya spoke quietly. "It makes a difference to the rest of us. It makes a difference to everyone who's been putting up with this for years and couldn't say anything because we need our jobs." "You already burned down," Sarah added, "but you can choose what rises from the ashes." I sat there processing. These people, some of whom I barely knew, were willing to stand with me. Not because they liked me particularly, not because we were friends, but because the email I'd accidentally sent had opened a door, had said out loud what everyone had been whispering in conference rooms and break rooms and parking lots for years. "Richard has a lot of power," I said slowly. "He can fire all of us." "He can fire you," Sarah corrected. "He can probably fire Maya and Tony and the others. But he can't fire me without board approval. I'm senior leadership. And once the board sees what I've documented, once they hear from employees who are willing to testify about the culture he's created, his power gets a lot smaller. And if it doesn't work, I asked. Then we all get fired, Maya said bluntly. But at least we went down swinging. There was something beautiful about that. Something terrifying, but beautiful. What do you need me to do? I heard myself ask. Sarah smiled. Just a little. Show up at 3 o'clock. When Richard starts talking, speak up. Tell your story. The real story. About Brad, about your campaign, about why you wrote that email. We'll back you up. And then we see what happens. It was 2:58. 2 minutes until the company-wide meeting. I walked down to the large meeting space on the second floor. The room was already packed. People sitting in rows of chairs, standing along the walls, joining via video from remote locations. The whole company gathered to watch my execution. Richard stood at the front. He had his little headset microphone on. He looked appropriately solemn. Disappointed but understanding. Ready to deliver his teachable moment. I was supposed to sit in the back. Stay quiet. Let him talk about me like I wasn't there. Let him control the narrative. Instead, I walked to the front of the room. Richard saw me coming. His expression flickered. Confusion, then annoyance, then something like anger, quickly masked as surprise. "Lydia," he said into his microphone, his voice projecting to everyone. "This isn't the time for 'I have something to say,'" I interrupted. My voice shook, but I kept going. I didn't have a microphone, but I didn't need one. The room was dead silent. "I sent that email by mistake," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. That part was unprofessional and I apologize for it. But I don't apologize for the content. And I'm not the only one who feels this way. Sarah Kim stood up from her seat in the third row. Then Maya Chen. Then Tony. Then Rachel and David and Amy. Then, to my absolute shock, Marcus stood up. Then more people. People I didn't know. People from other departments. People who'd been at Tech Vista for years and people who'd just started. Not everyone, but enough. "We've requested a formal board review of leadership practices," Sarah announced, her voice clear and firm. "We have documentation of favoritism, credit theft, hostile work environment, complaints that were suppressed, and promotion decisions that violated company policy." The room erupted, people talking, some looking shocked. Some nodding like this confirmed things they'd suspected. Some looking at Richard like they were seeing him clearly for the first time. Richard tried to regain control. "This is highly inappropriate," he said into his microphone. "This meeting is about addressing." "This meeting is about accountability," Maya interrupted. "And we're done letting you control who gets held accountable." It was chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos. Janice from HR stood up looking pale and overwhelmed. Other executives were talking urgently into their phones. Richard's face had gone from solemn to red to pale to something like panic. He'd lost the room, completely. The meeting fell apart. People started leaving, talking in groups, pulling out phones. Richard tried to call everyone back to order, but nobody was listening anymore. I stood at the front of the room, shaking, barely believing what had just happened. Sarah pulled me aside as people filed out. "You're still fired," she said bluntly. "Richard has that authority, and he's not backing down. Security is probably coming to escort you out within the hour." "I know," I said. "But the board meeting is tomorrow morning," Sarah continued. "And now they don't have a choice. They have to investigate. And for what it's worth, you started something important today." I didn't feel like I'd started anything. I felt like I'd exploded a bomb and barely survived the blast. But Maya hugged me as she walked past. Actually hugged me, which surprised both of us. "I already sent your portfolio to 3 companies I know are hiring," she whispered. "With my personal recommendation. Check your email tonight." Marcus walked me back to my desk. I finished packing my things into the cardboard box that HR had helpfully provided. My plant. My photos. My coffee mug. The evidence of 18 months compressed into one small box. "That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen," Marcus said quietly. "That was a disaster," I corrected. "Yeah," he agreed. "But a beautiful disaster." Security showed up at 4:15. They were polite about it, at least. Walked me down to the lobby, made sure I had all my belongings, took my key card and my building access pass. I walked out of Tech Vista Solutions for the last time at 4:30 on a Wednesday afternoon. It was raining. Of course it was raining. This was Seattle. Marcus walked me to the bus stop even though he was supposed to be working. "Text me," he said. "Let me know you're okay." I promised I would. The bus ride home was surreal. I sat with my cardboard box on my lap watching Seattle blur past through rain-streaked windows and wondered what I'd just done. Wondered if I'd made everything worse. Wondered if I'd just become unhireable in the entire Seattle tech community. Wondered if I cared. Joss was waiting at our apartment when I got home. She'd left work early. She took one look at my face and my cardboard box and pulled me into a hug. "So it happened," she said. "Yeah," I replied. It happened. She'd bought ice cream and wine. We sat on our lumpy couch that we'd found on Craigslist 3 years ago, and I told her everything. About Maya and Sarah and the conference room meeting. About the 3 o'clock disaster. About speaking up in front of everyone. About the chaos that followed. About getting escorted out by security like a criminal. "That's very you," Joss said when I finished. "Accidentally starting a revolution." For the first time all day, I laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh that's halfway to crying but doesn't quite get there. "I don't know what I'm going to do," I admitted. "I don't have a job. I don't have a reference. I just publicly burned every bridge at a major tech company." "You told the truth," Joss said simply. "That counts for something." I wanted to believe her. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed staring at my ceiling, replaying the day over and over, wondering what I could have done differently. Wondering if I should have just kept my mouth shut, let Richard have his teachable moment, resigned quietly, and moved on. But every time I thought about staying silent about letting him turn me into a cautionary tale, while everyone else kept suffering under his leadership, something in me rebelled. Maybe I'd made the right choice. Or maybe I'd just made the choice I could live with. Maybe those were the same thing. My phone buzzed constantly. Messages from people at Tech Vista. Some thanking me. Some telling me I was an idiot who just made everything worse. Some asking what happened after I left. And one from Marcus at 11:37 at night that just said Richard is out. I sat up in bed. Texted back. What Marcus called instead of texting. "The board met tonight," he said. "Emergency meeting. Sarah presented everything. Maya and Tony and like 10 other people testified. Richard resigned an hour ago." I couldn't breathe. He resigned. They gave him a choice. Resign or get fired. He chose to resign. Probably got some kind of severance deal to keep him quiet. But he's gone, Lydia. He's actually gone. I didn't know what to say. I'd expected to be the only casualty. Expected Richard to weather the storm like powerful men always do, while I became a cautionary tale and a LinkedIn joke. Sarah's interim CEO Marcus continued. "She's cleaning house. Everyone Richard promoted who didn't deserve it is getting reviewed. Brad is probably gone by next week. Good. Brad could learn what it felt like to lose everything because of his own incompetence for once." "What about you?" I asked. "I'm fine," Marcus said. "Probably, I hope. Sarah seems to actually care about merit and performance, so that's a good sign." We talked for another 20 minutes. He filled me in on everything I'd missed. The emergency board meeting. The investigation Sarah had apparently been conducting for months. The other employees who'd come forward with complaints once they realized they weren't alone. The email that I'd sent by mistake had somehow become the catalyst for actual change. "You did this," Marcus said before hanging up. "You know that, right? This whole thing happened because you finally said what needed to be said." "I didn't mean to," I said. "I know. But you did it anyway. And that matters." The next 3 weeks were weird. Surreal. I filed for unemployment. Updated my portfolio. Started applying to jobs, expecting rejections, but not sure what else to do. Maya emailed me. She'd been promoted to vice president of design. Sarah was restructuring leadership. People who'd been overlooked for years were finally getting recognition. "We're hiring," Maya wrote. "I know you just left, but if you want to come back, I'd like you on my team. Better position. Better pay. Actual appreciation for your work." It was tempting. Really tempting. But something in me hesitated. Tech Vista was changing, but I'd still be walking back into a place where everyone knew me as the person who'd sent that email. The person who'd exploded everything. Then I got another email. From a design director at a company called Wavelength, a smaller tech startup in Fremont that did educational software. They'd heard about what happened. Apparently, word travels fast in Seattle tech circles. "We value honesty and integrity," the email said. "We'd like to talk to you about a senior designer position. Fully remote. Competitive salary. Let us know if you're interested." I interviewed. They offered me the job 2 days later. More money than Tech Vista had paid me. Better benefits. Remote work so I could stay in my apartment with Joss and not have to commute downtown every day. I said yes. 3 weeks after the email that destroyed my career, I started a new job. Better position. Better company. Better situation. The universe has a strange sense of humor. "Brad, I heard through Marcus got demoted and then quit before they could fire him. He's working at some other company now, probably taking credit for other people's work and failing upward like mediocre dudes always do. But at least it wasn't Tech Vista's problem anymore." Richard disappeared from the Seattle tech scene. Rumor was he moved to California. Good riddance. Sarah turned Tech Vista into the company it had always claimed to be. She implemented actual transparency policies. She created real pathways for advancement based on merit. She fired the people who'd been coasting on connections and promoted the people who'd been doing the actual work. The company started thriving. Funny how that works when you value competence over politics. And me, I settled into my new job. Worked from home. Did design work that I actually enjoyed for people who actually appreciated it. Paid my rent. Saved money for the first time in years. Helped Joss when she finally applied to grad school for social work and got in. I still check my sent folder sometimes. That email is still there. 347 words that I never meant to send to 3,000 people. I've thought a lot about whether I regret it. The professional answer is yes, obviously. You're supposed to regret public mistakes. Supposed to wish you could take them back and do things differently. But the real answer is more complicated. That email forced me to stop playing small. Forced me to be honest even though I didn't mean to be. Forced me to stand up in front of everyone and own what I'd said instead of hiding. And yeah, it cost me my job. Cost me a lot of dignity. Cost me some professional relationships. But it also showed me who my real allies were. Showed me what I was capable of when I stopped being afraid. Showed me that sometimes burning everything down clears the way for something better. I learned something from Sarah, Kim, from Maya, from everyone who stood up in that meeting. I learned that sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones who save you. And sometimes you have to break before you can build something better. These days, I'm more careful with email. I triple-check recipients. I save drafts instead of sending immediately. I definitely don't drink wine near my laptop. Basic precautions that I should have been taking all along. But I'm also more honest. When I disagree, I say so. When someone takes credit for my work, I correct them immediately, professionally, but firmly. When I see unfairness, I don't stay silent and hope someone else will speak up. Because I learned that silence doesn't protect you. Playing small doesn't keep you safe. Sometimes the only way forward is through, even if through means blowing up everything you've built and starting over. Do I recommend accidentally sending a brutal email about your CEO to your entire company? Absolutely not. Please learn from my mistake and check your recipients, always. Every time, multiple times. But do I regret it? Not as much as you'd think. Because that email, that terrible mistake, that moment of wine-fueled rage and misclicked buttons, somehow became the thing that changed my life. Changed a lot of lives, actually. It forced conversations that needed to happen. It exposed problems that needed fixing. It gave other people permission to speak up when they'd been staying silent for years. And it taught me that sometimes your worst mistakes become your most important moments. Not because you meant them to be, but because you choose what to do after they happen. You choose whether to hide or to stand up. You choose whether to apologize for existing or to own your truth even when it's messy and uncomfortable and professionally disastrous. I still have that email saved. Sometimes I read it. Not because I'm proud of it, but because it reminds me of who I was before. Someone who stayed quiet, who played safe, who believed that keeping my head down would protect me. That email was a lot of things. Unprofessional, messy, career-ending. But it was also honest. Raw. True. And honest, I've learned, is a pretty good place to start. Even if you have to blow everything up to get there. even if it takes 2 glasses of wine and a catastrophically misaddressed email to force you into it. Even if the whole world is watching when you finally tell the truth. Because at the end of the day, at the end of your career, at the end of your life, the question isn't whether you made mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The question is whether you let those mistakes define you or whether you let them teach you. I chose to let mine teach me. And somehow, against all odds, I came out the other side better than I started. So here's to mistakes. Here's to sending emails to the wrong people. Here's to accidentally starting revolutions when you just meant to vent to a friend. Here's to being honest even when it costs you everything. Because sometimes everything you lose was holding you back anyway. And sometimes the best thing you can do is burn it all down and start over. Just maybe check your recipient list first. Trust me on that one.